honor and my pleasure, Reba. I'm so glad to be here. Thank
I'm
you.
so glad to have you. And tell me a little bit about what's going on in your life.
Mm, well, I am preparing to make a big and daring step of my own. I'm about to launch a podcast in the beginning
Wow.
of June, which is a podcast called Trust Your Sacred Feminine Flow, conversations about money, transformation, and feminine sovereignty.
Wow.
So,
Beautiful.
yes, as I have been in production for that, it's been a dream for almost a year now to do it. But as I'm preparing to do my first interviews and have the launch within my sights, I can feel the anxiety building of putting my voice out there more fully and letting people see me in my both in my power and in my passion for the feminine. So that's what's going on.
Yes, isn't it interesting how these experiences are really such gifts because you know we think we were talking a little bit about parenting, about how one might approach parenting as if, I got this, I'm going to be great at it. And then, of course, the experience of it, there's just so many lessons that are so in our faces and ask us to grow in ways that we don't expect. And of course, we're finding that when we step out, the stepping out really throws up all the pieces that need to be resolved
Mm,
right in our faces.
mhm.
So I hear you loud and clear because I experience it too. But it's such a gift because, well, how is it going for you? Before I say what it's like for me, how's that feeling for you? What shape is that taking for you?
Well, it's interesting. I can feel, even as I'm sitting here, just some tension physically in my body.
Yeah.
Um, and funnily enough, as I was working with my mentor around the technical piece, um, she was having trouble hearing me, like literally hearing me. And she kept saying, I've never had this trouble before. And, and I realized that it was, was this place of not fully wanting to be heard that was manifesting in these technological issues where she couldn't hear me. She could hear the person on the other end, but she couldn't hear me.
That's so fascinating. And
So a lot of it's just the physical tension that feels challenging.
so, what did you do with that?
What did I do with that? Well, some of it is I keep going and taking the next step. Um, as you know, we're both participating in the telesummit that's coming up uh,
Yes.
next week. And in preparation for that recording, had to go through some of the emotions of fear and um, just kind of feeling bound up before I could do that. And just taking each step has been helpful in
Yes.
dealing with it as it comes up.
And since you're I'm getting more and more fascinated by this interest that I see around me of the divine feminine, the sacred feminine, and actually you're going to feature me on your Facebook group, and you asked me these questions that really got me stimulated about the subject and thinking about it in those terms, which I have to say that's not my training or how I usually do, but I totally relate. And how do you, I'm very schooled in the masculine way of push, push, push. And part of what we have to do is push through the fears. But how do we do that in a feminine way
Mm,
versus in that masculine way?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And for me, the experience has been learning about how to hang out on the edge of the fear and and tolerate it to take the step forward, and then pulling back either into myself or with getting support to the place of resource. So in my experience, a feminine approach is more about keeping the ground underneath you and your body present as you're moving forward. And the strong emotions of the fear come up. You dance with those, you hang with those, you let them move through because it's really just energy. And then you take the next step and you take the next step.
So this is interesting because you view it as sort of like waves of energy. So do you feel it like almost like physical, like butterflies and your stomach goes, all that really fun stuff? Your voice goes like this. I always like it when you have to talk and suddenly your voice sounds like that.
Yes.
No. So yeah, it's funny because when you say, well, sometimes I retreat, you mentioned sometimes I retreat. What is that like for you? Is that just a question of sitting and feeling, or do you go through a kind of a process when you retreat? Or because you can get an image from retreat. Does that mean licking your wounds? Does that mean, what does that mean?
Well, for me, it means, I would say, collecting myself. And sometimes, we all have different ways of learning, of being. And for me, I am a very kinesthetic and emotional person. So I have strong and deep emotions, and I do experience them like energy. So for me, sometimes I just need to go and maybe just let a shudder, tremble, move through my body, and then collect myself. Just like I know you have a young daughter, and I'm sure there are times when she has that emotional storm that passes through and then needs to recompose herself. And so for me, for good or for bad, it's not that different than that.
Yes. I always see a child who's upset in a way I see it as being knocked off center. Mm-hmm. And then giving them what they need, whether it's food or comforting, it puts them back onto center. And that's very reminiscent of your word, I collect myself.
Yes. And it is, in my experience, it is about, it's about the nervous system. It's about regulating our nervous systems and getting, when we're in that hyper emotional state, we get dysregulated. And then as we learn to self-soothe and calm, it's like re-regulating and centering or collecting ourselves.
Wow. If only I could do that, I think my life would be a lot easier.
Amen. Yeah.
Because my process is not like that. First of all, no, I think what's good about your process, it's very practical, and it's very, you need to know what you need is a strong center, because in order to return to it, you need to know that strong center. So that's a foundational piece that not everybody has. Yeah. I mean, everybody has a center, but they don't always know it.
Right. Well, and the thing is, Reba, is I have been doing personal growth work for decades. So yeah. I didn't start here 20 years ago. And you and I talked about parenting, and frankly, learning through parenting has been like the advanced course of how to do that for myself, how to be that kind of resource for my daughter.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Is that something you can teach people?
Yes. You mean how to
center, like, because you seem to have this connection to, like, I'll just, I'll let the shutters pass through, and I'll let this, I'll do these things, and this energy will move, and I'm good again. I'm good to go.
Yes. I have the resources back intact. Yes, absolutely. It is something that you can learn. And in my experience, I have worked with teachers who I know you're familiar with somatic experiencing work.
Right. I just got to know it a little bit. Yeah.
So that is one body of work that has been useful. And I just have had teachers who have been based in the body and the physiology.
Fascinating.
And it's been both, I would say, part of my opening to the feminine, because the feminine is much more of an embodied approach or practice than the masculine tends to be more mental, or reason or logic. So the teachers that I've worked with have supported me in that.
That's so interesting. Now, I don't want this whole this session is actually for you. I know I'm acting like I'm the student here, but I want to have you back. I want to do a month of sessions all about the divine feminine, because it's so interesting. And I think so many of us are, we're doing our own work here. We're entrepreneurs, and we're bumping into the work habits that were conditioned within a patriarchal system. And we're not only wanting to put our work out, but we're wanting to find a new way of delivering it, a new vehicle that's not so masculine. So I want to have you back to really explore this further, and I hope you'll agree to that, because it would be an honor to have you back.
Absolutely.
Okay, but for today, what I want to do is offer my help. I come from different modalities than you. And what can I help you with today?
Well, here's the thing. Whenever I read your writing, and in particular, I was so struck by the piece you wrote about the passage in the desert, the Passover piece that you wrote. That really, it touched me deeply. And there's something that I'm aware of, or just became aware of, about like possibly needing to get bigger in the sense of, holding a different frame than the people around me, or that I've been closest to, or than my teachers. And it seems related to that article that you wrote. So any wisdom, insights, perspective.
To watch the rest of this episode, click on the link below the video now if you're on YouTube. And if you're on Facebook, click on the Watch the Full Episode button when the video is done.